Hey, what up, everybody? What's going on? It's your boy, Joe Nyamwange, and welcome to our third webinar, Let's Talk Money. Let's Talk Money. We here. We are streaming this on my personal Facebook page. We're streaming this on the community. I got the YouTube link posted and on LinkedIn. We about to be everywhere, and we got some really, really good stuff. And so I want to take a quick moment first just to acknowledge and celebrate women this month. Look, I have two daughters. I'm madly in love with my wife, and my mom is one of the most important women in the world to me. I have an affection for women, all right? And I want to advocate for them. I want to see them win. And so this particular month, we really wanted to lean in on women, but just again, to kind of orient you guys with what Let's Talk Money is all about. This literally birthed from people talking to me, reaching out and saying, Joseph, we need more content and more conversation around financial matters that are critical, right? And so we kicked it off in January. We started talking about this idea of credit and how to make sure you got your credit right. Last month for Black History Month, we talked about Greenwood, Wall Street, the Black Wall Street, and we leaned in to talk not just about the massacre, but about the people that were part of Black Wall Street and what made it so popular, and that we could see this resurgence of improvement in the African-American community happen again. I believe it wholeheartedly. But this month I've been waiting for such a long time, and for various reasons, some selfish. One is, the person, special guest who I'm going to introduce in a minute. She's someone who I have an affection for. She is someone who I admire, a good friend of mine, an ally who loves and cares about the advancement of women financially. That's one part, man. But the other reason, man, I just love this, man. And so, look, if you're tuning in, just post in the comments, just say we here. Let me know where you're from, what you're repping. So just let me know that you're here. But anyways, with all that being said, at this moment, I just want to take a pause to introduce Sara. Sara and I, we go way back, and like I said, my previous employer with Microsoft, we worked together, and her and I have shared and really poured into each other in terms of just the burden that the African-American community is facing. And she had shared with me her passion of seeing women specifically win. And so when we had thought about this topic, we thought it made sense. And so it was no question, I definitely wanted to have her on the show. And so, look, without further ado, I want to welcome my good friend, Sara. I need you guys to give the undivided attention. Let's keep the comments chat lit. Let's make this interactive. She talks about this concept of money and women. We're about to change the whole paradigm shift. So we're going to welcome my girl, Sara, just right now.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Joe. It's just an honor to be here to speak today about women and personal finance. It's such a passion of mine, and we're going to get into a lot of different topics. So please put your questions in the comments. We want to get those answered. And more importantly, we want to be empowering women to really control their destiny when it comes to personal finance. So thank you all for showing up and being a part of this conversation. I'm just really eager to help wherever I can and really enable women and empower women to be successful. So thank you. One of the disclaimers I'm just going to say, these are my thoughts of my own, not my employer. In investing, there are some risks. So we definitely want to make sure that you think about your overall financial situation and what we discussed today. Some of the things may be a fit, some things may not. So more importantly, just be curious and continue to learn, because I think the more curiosity you have, the more you learn. Learning is power. And so we really want to give you all the learnings we can to enable yourselves to be real successful. So when Joe and I were talking about this topic of enabling women in finance, I mean, I myself work with financial institutions and in the technology space. And gosh, it's really come a long way in the last couple of years, but man, do we have way more work to do. And so really excited to be just getting this blasted out to the masses and getting people really empowered and jazzed about the topic. So we're going to start with the topic of independence. And I know this is something that depending on where you're at in your life stage and where things are at with your personal relationships and whatnot, it may be different for everyone. But I think at the end of the day, I'm going to start with this story. I was in Chicago. That's where I met my husband, and we decided that we were going to move to Minnesota. I bought a duplex, and I was going to do the house hacking thing, and was really excited because I was a strong, independent woman buying my first investment property. And one of the things that I was really clear is, if we're not married when we make the move to Minnesota, you're getting a lease, and you are my renter. Because at the end of the day, I've just seen so many situations where women have a little bit more reliance financially, whether it be the percentage of rent paid, electricity bills, things of that nature, and then something happens. And you got to be independent. You got to have some independence, because at the end of the day, you just don't know what'll happen. So long story short, he ended up proposing, and now we're married and all that great stuff. So yay, but not every situation happens like that. So I would say that from a independence perspective, just make sure that like you're creating your own legacy and you have your own funds to go off of, because at the end of the day, you don't need to be dependent upon anyone else to be successful. And at the end of the day, you are someone that can bring your own financial experience to that relationship. So that's just something I just wanted to call out really around that independence. I was looking up some statistics, and at the end of the day, about women retire with about 2/3 of the money that men do. And I thought that was a really shocking statistic. Like, are we just starting later? Like, gosh, like I look at what my husband's invested, and he started probably about 5 years prior to me. And I'm like, gosh, those numbers are so much bigger. That's not fair. So my message to you is start early, start often, start investing, and invest in yourself, because the more time you have, you're never going to get that back. So the earlier you start, the better. I would say that the last thing I'll say on that is, if your relationship can't handle having like a rental agreement or a roommate agreement, really consider whether or not you should be moving in together, because there's a lot of legal binding documents and financials that go along with living together. And it's just something to be really aware of at where you're at in your relationship, and thinking about how that impacts your finances. Talking about impacting your finances, we want to make sure that your money is working for you. I saw the statistics, 71% of women hold their money in cash. And here's the problem with that. At the rate of inflation right now, the rate of inflation is like 7%. Average stock market returns for the last 10 years, about 10 to 12%, whereas the bank gives you like 0.002% on your savings, which means you work your butt off to earn money, and then you put it in a bank where it doesn't grow. And this means that your money becomes less valuable over time. And so I would very much so encourage you to think about, how can I make my money work for me? You work too hard to work for money in order for it to not work for you. I mean, there's everything from treasury I-bonds and some really basic things that at least get you the rate of inflation. Because at the end of the day, you got to make sure that money is working as hard for you as you work to create that money. And then some of the other statistics that I saw that were just like, we got to change this, women. We got to really just own up to it and like make some changes. 8% of women actively invest. That's just unreal. I mean, I think it's something that's changing, but I think if we can move the needle even 1 to 2%, the amount of women who actively invest, gosh, like we're creating a legacy for ourselves, women. Like we are creating a legacy and a financial independence that we can then bring into whatever relationships we have. We can give back to our communities. That's been something that's really important to me, is how do I make sure that I'm giving back to community efforts that are going to really impact future generations? And so making sure that if I'm going to make those investments, like I want to make sure that those communities and those nonprofits are getting the benefit of the investments and the growth that I'm seeing. and some of the other statistics that I thought were just like, we got to do something. And I hope that I'm the last white female that comes on the show, because 59% of Black women and 48% of Latina women are not investing today. And so let's really rally around each other, really support one another, and make sure that it's everyone that's investing in the female community, and those that identify as female, because gosh, we got so much opportunity out there. Let's not let the boys beat us in this space. One of the other misnomers is that women just don't have as much money to invest. And part of the problem is we're not paid equally. And it is so frustrating when I see women losing when it comes to their pay. When it comes to pay and hiring, if you are a hiring manager, do not cheap out on your women. Especially do not cheap out on those Black, Indigenous, and people of color, because those folks are behind and we need to get them equally paid. At the end of the day, everyone brings talents and skills, and regardless of your gender, regardless of the color of your skin, you should be paid equally, because equal pay for equal work. Like, end of story, full stop. Joseph and I talk a lot about this, and it's just, man, if you hire people, do not cheap out on talent. Don't think, oh, I'm going to give them this price because I know I could probably get it for 10% cheaper. Like, no, like that, away with that. There's enough people resigning because they're not getting paid well. They can go somewhere else. So at the end of the day, pay your people, pay them well, pay them equitable, because that's going to make a huge difference when it comes to the pay gap. Something else to mention is, if you look at a 40-year career and you don't think about inflation over that 40 years, and you remember rate of return in the stock market, it's like 10 to 12% year over year, $900,000 is the pay gap for women who over the course of their 40 years. And I think one of the things we got to think about is, there are some geographies where 20-something-year-old women are getting paid the same, and it's getting really close to equal to their male counterparts. The problem is, the moment they have a kid, the moment they have anything happen in their life, including just aging overall, they're getting paid less. And another contributing factor to that is, for every 100 men that are promoted, 72 women are. So when you think about your promotions and you think about your people and who's going to continue to drive your organization forward, remember those women, because I think that there's an opportunity for you to tap people on the shoulder. I know in my career, the men who tapped me on the shoulder gave me the confidence to continue to raise my hand. And we need to encourage women to continue to raise their hand. And so I'm just speaking especially to hiring managers out there, just remember, when it comes to onboarding and when it comes to promoting women, remember, the more women you promote, you're going to have better outcomes. There's so many studies by McKinsey and all of these big four consulting firms about the value and the benefits of promoting and having women in leadership roles. Don't forget about that. That's going to impact your bottom line overall and overall your success of your business. So last thing I'll say before I get on my high horse about pay equity, women on average reach their peak earning at 44. Men's peak earning is at 55. That's 11 years. 11 years of pay inequity. And that's getting close to retirement, when those years really matter. And we got to really think about, how are we promoting those women and making sure that we're really empowering them, not that we're just like comparing them to one versus the other. How are we empowering them? How are we encouraging them? How are we giving them the skills and the experiences and the chances to both win and fail? Because like, fail fast, let's learn from it. And those experiences sometimes are even more valuable than the ones where you're just winning all the time. And I can tell you, there's a lot of really great women out there. We just have to open our eyes. There's a lot of unconscious bias out there. The next thing I'll talk about is job types. So very unconventional in what I do. When I graduated high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Went to college because I thought that was the right thing. Switched my major a ton of times and ended up in volunteer management type role for a nonprofit. And then someone gave me a shot at technology sales. That's really what changed my career trajectory. And so if you think about what's traditional when it comes to female roles, throw it out the window. It's toxic. That whole story needs to be done. Like, we need to put it to bed, bury it, and just get it out of our normal conversation, because it's not the case anymore. And we need to continue to drive for equity in all of the different job types, the different sectors that are available. If we look at what COVID did to the female workforce, 55% of job loss occurred for women during COVID, which means we were the majority of people who lost their jobs, left our jobs for a variety of reasons. And some of them are quite noble, like being able to be home, taking care of elderly, not having access to childcare services. Like, things happened during COVID, and women bared the brunt of it. And so I think what we need to do is think about, how do we bring even more women back into the workforce and really have a focused effort around what are the services, what are the perks and the benefits that an organization can offer that encourage women to come back to work. And so I think that's something, there's food of thought really for organizations, especially if you're a leader in one. One of the other things when it comes to personal finance, if you think about the financial sector, you kind of think about the finance bros. Wearing the Patagonia vests and things of that nature. And I think one of the things that's traditionally been there is that, if you look at financial advisors, I mean, we have one, and 86% of them are men. And part of it's a matter of, we got to get women consulting people and really helping people with their finances, take a hold of their financial journey. And we need those people, those women in those roles. So I think it's really, really vital that we look to see who's actually giving the financial advice to the broader community. And if you can find a female, and you yourself are a female, I think it's just an amazing opportunity to continue to evangelize that, hey, women are in this arena, and we're not here to toy around. Like, we're here to get stuff done. If you look at investment banking, it's like 98% men. So another area, like, hey, get into investment banking, like, do this, like, the sky's the limit. And it truly is. If it's your passion, if it's what you want to do, if you're curious about it, go for it. The one thing I also want to talk about is technology roles. And I think one of the things, as when I was in high school and into college, was like, oh, I was never a tech person. I'm not a tech person. Because there is these stereotypes about being that techie type person. And to be honest, I grew into it, and I love the skin I'm in, being in technology, being that technical person, and really supporting my clients when it comes to technology. And gosh, it's been amazing. That being said, over the last 15 years, it's been a bumpy ride, and it's not been unicorns and rainbows, but I've been able to identify male and female allies that have empowered me to keep going. And especially when you're trailblazing in an industry that is predominantly male, you really got to think about, how do we trailblaze, how do we empower, and how do we create mentorship so that you feel like, yes, I can do this. Because sometimes you've got all this negative mental chatter, and you just need that one person to say, keep going, Sara, you got this. Insert your name here. Because at the end of the day, those people, while it's a simple thing, it means the world to them. So if you're in a position to empower women in that way, do it. It makes the world of difference when you can empower someone, edge them on, tell them to keep going, because Lord knows they need it. And I would say that the other thing that it drives me bonkers is when they talk about women have been socialized to be bad at money, or that we're spendaholics, or that we're risk averse. Like, who's saying this stuff? Like, why are these blogs still being written about this? Women are risk aware. They are very aware and high EQ when it comes to the risk analysis of financially investing. And I think that's something that we need to think about. Being bad at money, like if you keep on being told that you're bad at money and you're a spendaholic, what do you think you're going to do? So I think encouraging through positive behavior, like, hey, you can have a budget and you can stick to it, and that's great. Like, I remember my first few years out of college, I had the student loans and trying to invest in a 401k and all that jazz. And I didn't get to go out with my friends. I didn't go out and socialize because I didn't have that extra cash just to do that. And it sucked. But at the end of the day, I had those skills to budget. I had those skills to be risk aware of where I spend my money and my time impacts my financial future. And so while all of this chatter in the magazines and social media and all that crap, it wasn't true. And I needed someone to either tell me or myself to realize that this isn't who I actually am. So it's just something to be aware of, especially if you are around impressionable women who are coming of age and really figuring themselves out. Encourage them. Tell them that they're great at money. Show them how to do a budget. Encourage their risk awareness rather than being risk averse. And I think all in how you frame it, you're going to encourage the next generation of women to be amazing when it comes to finances. And then I think one of the other things I want to talk about is first generation. Like, I'm a first generation college student. I have a whole lot of people around me being like, oh yeah, you go to college, you do this, you network, you get internships, all that jazz. It was a completely new playing field for a lot of folks in my family. And so I didn't have the same type of guidance from those folks to say, hey, you do this, you do that. I'm like, whatever. So I had to go out and seek those people. And one of the things about mentors is for every season of life, you're going to have different mentors. And some may come, some may go, and some may never re-enter your life. And that is okay, because whatever the season of life you're in, whatever the season of your career you're in, you need those mentors to encourage you to say like, hey, you should be networking here. Or you should think about this. Finding those mentors is just vital, because they're going to give you some nuggets of information that was probably in your back of your mind anyways, but it's an opportunity really to say, oh, that is a great opportunity, and it's reiterated by my mentor, so I'm going to go do that. And I've had amazing mentors throughout my life that have really helped me get to where I am today. And the thing that I'll close on before we get into Q&A is diverse voices, community, and support. At the end of the day, like, we can have a group of many people speaking, but let me tell you, having a group of women, even if it's like, there's a group called For Her First 100K, it's like a Facebook community, but it's only women. And the type of empowerment you see in that community where it's like, hey, let's celebrate our wins. Regardless of where you are on the journey, if it's your first credit card that you're paying down, or you finally have a budget in order to get a hold of your student loans, like, that's something to celebrate. And this community will celebrate you. Not to mention, that same community is there to help you with salary negotiation, resume help, interview tips. Like, it is such an amazing community when you have women all focused on empowering one another. And so I would say that, especially for you women out there who are looking for that type of community, my recommendation would be to take a look at Her First 100K Facebook community and really start to engage. One of the things that I will say is there are a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of MLMs or get rich quick schemes. And if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And so I just want you to be aware, like, social media, while it can be a really great place for community, it can be a really great place for you to lose money and get scammed. So just buyer be wise. There's just a lot of things out there that's just not serving you. So just be careful there. So last thing that I'll also say is I recognize that I am not the voice that I want to lift up in this conversation. I want to lift up diverse voices. So I want to call out a few Instagram accounts that I really like. And the reason that I do this is when I'm on Instagram, most of the time they're trying to sell me something like buy this, buy that, like take a look at this, go on this trip. But I think at the end of the day, if you're following people who are teaching you about financial literacy, as well as whatever else Instagram's trying to sell you, at least you're getting a diverse view and getting a little education along the way. So some of the folks that I really like to follow is Black Girl on a Budget, Better Wallet, Sharon Singh, Yo Quiero Dinero podcast, Investing Latina, and Delyani, the money coach. I found that these women are just amazing BIPOC voices that I absolutely love. I have a lot of respect for them and the type of content they're putting out there, and really think that it's been a benefit to me as I continue on my personal finance journey. Yeah, so that's what I've got. Joe, I think we've got a lot of questions.
Wow. Sara, this is why you were the right person for the job. Let me just first say thank you, man, so much. Look, there's so much to unpack. I want to encourage folks, and I'm looking at the chat. There's a lot of chatter on the chat. I'm going to encourage you, if you have questions, let's kind of bring them up. I know I got some questions I want to go through, but first, I want to take the question from Justin, because he asked something pretty interesting. He has said, can you talk about how technology bridges the gap with working from home and marketing?
Yeah, so curious about the marketing piece, but for the working from home piece, it's interesting because especially, I mean, I'm not a working parent myself, but I know that there's good and bad that comes with it. Because when technology bridges our ability to work from home, one, you're not going to have the commute, so you have a little bit more time. How you use that time, I think, has changed. And I know me personally, it's really easy for me to like roll out of bed, make some coffee, and like immediately hit the laptop and start working. And great for my employer because they get like 3 extra hours of work out of me every day because I'm like shoveling in lunch at my desk. But especially for working parents, it's not quite like that. And Joe, you can probably talk to this too, but I feel like sometimes technology has us on so much that we aren't creating space for our family. We aren't creating space for the things that our money afford us to do. I think that working is important if you're trying to build financial legacy and build that up. But at what point does it become negative to the folks around you who are going to care about you? Because at the end of the day, like your employer can drop you like a bad habit, whereas like family and friends are there forever. Like they're really in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I've learned, and you know, I have 2 children under 2. And matter of fact, Nia's office is now officially my office. She has her own desk.
How cute.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I think the challenge that while initially it may look like there were some pros because I get to see my family more, which is a good thing, right? I'm present, right? It's not like dad has gone to work or, you know, mom's gone to work. They see us. I think to your point, though, home always used to be it was always protected, right? It's where you came to kind of get, feel like a hero again. You didn't get beat up from the world. And so now, and as the world becomes more connected, that force field around home, right, kind of starts to be lifted. And all of a sudden work, church or whatever it is outside starts to, triculate into home. And so if you don't put a fence around it, you might lose the very special thing that home was always intended to be. So I agree with everything you said. I think, technology plays a role, but it requires us to definitely be more vigilant for sure. But let me ask you this, because I want to get back to this because you threw a lot of stats out there that I thought was really intriguing. I never knew.
So many.
I think there was someone that was like really eye-opening when you talked about women have 2/3 in savings for retirement than men. And I think I can't speak as because I'm a man, right? And I want to understand. I'm asking this not to be controversial, but I want to understand. But what is holding back women from investing? Like what's holding them back from going out there and getting the money? And I'm curious to know, Sarah, your point of view, and in the chat, if you have an answer too, post your comments. But that's kind of what I'm trying to, like, I'm scratching my head just trying to think through.
Mm-hmm. I think that, I grew up in more of a traditional family. So like dealing with finances was more of like the guy thing. And I think at the end of the day, it's both of you. I know we talked about this a little bit, Joe, but like finances should be both partners at the table together, talking about what your financial goals are, management, and kind of delegating like, hey, you do this, you do that. Because even if it's not your favorite thing, at least you're aware and at least you are recognizing where your financial destiny is. But I feel like it just wasn't something that was discussed. And the first couple of years out of college, like one of my employers had just started a 401k program, and none of the women in the office like really did anything. I think it was like one of like 2 women in like a sea of 50 men at this tech company. They were learning about 401ks. And then I left and I didn't invest. Like for 4 years, I didn't invest in my 401k. And then I take a look at my husband, who is about the same age as me, and he had that same time. And you look at over the last 15 years, like the compounding time of 10 years compared to 15 years, and then extrapolate that over a 40-year career, like that's huge bucks. And that can be the difference between you living really comfortably in retirement and living paycheck to paycheck and really relying on whatever Social Security, if Social Security is around at that point in time, to be available.
Yeah, see, again, this is what I saw growing up, Sarah, and I don't know if it was like in your household, but like my dad was the guy who managed all the bills. And I knew my mom worked. Don't get me wrong. Like my mom worked, my dad worked, but it was almost like this, like everything when it comes to finances, go to dad. Even when we wanted stuff. Like, you know, mom, she had veto power. Like she could say no, but like the guy. And so I'm wondering if obviously we're seeing a lot of shifts in terms of gender roles and stereotypes. I'm wondering how much kind of impact the old, guards philosophy on finances is a guy thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like this is what the men do. And so I'm curious if you could just kind of talk on that a little bit about like the stereotype that money is for the man to handle.
Well, I think it kind of stems from, and my mom always paid the bills, but my mom wasn't the executor decision maker. I'll put it that way. My dad was a breadwinner, and my mom worked because, she needed to in order to make ends meet for our family. Like we weren't living high off the hog by any means. Like our church made sure that we were going to good school and helped with that tuition cost, which I'm forever grateful for. But my parents would have never been able to do it if it weren't for some of the help that they had. And I think that I always joked, especially when my husband and I were dating, I was like, I make double what your son makes, right? and not to be like cocky and mean, but I think it's important to say things like that sometimes, because I think it's just so many people are like, oh, like you married your husband, he just finished his MBA, like, oh, like, are you going to even work? It's like, yeah, he's on my insurance. Like, come on. And I think those comments are what needs to stop. And I think you can do it in a joking manner and make it lighthearted. But I think it's really important, especially like I find that when I'm in front of my cousin's kids, or my niece and anyone else that is, from high school, middle school, even grade school, having them hear that and having them hear me talk about how I am empowered financially, I think is where it starts. Because if they hear that as a regular message, they think it's normal. Like, oh yeah, women can be the breadwinner. That's totally fine. Like, and it's I think slowly changing, and I think it's going to take some time to get there unless we like really inorganically like supercharge it, which I would love to make happen, but There's only so much I can do in a day. Change the world.
No, I love it.
But I think that especially for women who are listening in, like, continue to talk about your success as like a businesswoman, a entrepreneur, like whatever it is. Like, young women need to hear that, and young boys need to hear that too, because the more they hear, it's like, oh, I can be whatever I want.
Yeah, and I think that the trend is shifting, mainly because I remember in college, like when I was in college in business school, like majority of them were women. Like it was not a lot of guys in the classroom. Now, I'm curious to know what the stats say in terms of does that translate into higher income? And you talked about women not getting paid their fair share. So they're getting the acumen, like they're getting the intellect, but they're not getting the same dollars, right? Like they're not getting paid the same amount of money. And so, that's something I think, like I remember was saying something along the lines that it'll take almost a century for women to catch up to where men are in terms of pay, unless we make some serious shifts. So,
yeah, I mean, I can just talk to like maternity leave. I have talked to so many women that like they've had to jockey their maternity leave because they've been working, like, especially in enterprise sales, it's like feast or famine. You get like this one big gigantic thing that you've worked the last 5 years on. And if you end up like getting pregnant, which for some people is really difficult. And so also tomorrow is April Fool's. Don't joke about that stuff. People are going through difficult times. PSA. But for those women who have like just worked so hard and gotten to a certain point in their career and then have to like jockey around their maternity leave so they get paid what they're worth, like, come on, companies, like, realize like that woman worked her tail off for the last 2 years, 5 years on this. Pay her what she like should be. Not, don't like, piecemeal it and be like, well, we're only going to pay you a max of like 60%, 80%, whatever like the maternity leave is. It's infuriating seeing how much women lose out because they've had a child and yet their husbands are, going off to the races and making money. And like, even during paternity leave, I think that there's like a little blip, but one of the interesting things I saw in the statistics is like, we're getting closer to gender pay equity in like early 20s, but it continues to like grow in inequity over the lifetime of someone's career. And so the fact that like a woman tops out at 44 and a guy tops out on average in their career at 55, that's 11 years of growth that women aren't getting. And so I think it really is a responsibility of an employer to take a look at it, not just like overall, but really look at the demographics, because I do think that there's also some ageism when it comes to, when people come in and out of the workforce and all that stuff. It's having a huge financial impact on women long term.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question as a husband and as a father. What could, and this is for the guys who are tuning in who got families, what can we do to help change and advocate and make sure that our women are getting what's rightfully theirs?
Empowerment, lifting up their voices. Like at the end of the day, those voices have to be the loudest ones in the room. Being able to empower them and brag about them, about how successful your wife is, how talented your wife is. When kids hear that as a partner saying all of these wonderful things and accolades about their partner sincerely, like the kids notice that. And that's what really starts to impact the future generation, is like when you're empowering your partner, when you're empowering them to take care of some of the finances, even if it's like a chore for them, which there are certain things that my husband has me do in our little budget app that just drive me bonkers, but I do it because at the end of the day, like, it's showing that like I'm taking charge of finances. I'm owning control of some of the finances as well. And whenever we decide to have kids, like, that's something that's really important to show them. And I think it's harder because everything's virtual now. Everything's an app. And so I think it's important to really sit your kids down and be very open about it. You don't have to be very open about every single dollar and penny, because they're gonna be like, well, mommy and daddy can afford that pony. But I think the goal is for them to realize that mom and dad both equally are invested in making sure that we're financially safe, that we're, in a good spot, and that they're planning for their future, and I should be planning for mine. And then when it comes to like allowances or whatever your setup is at home, not just empowering like the boys to save, the girls should save too. And if they're struggling, really empowering them to learn, and it really driving that curiosity. Because I will tell you that like I was the kid that always spent my allowance. It's just the way it was. Yeah. And if someone had just pushed me a little bit more, and not through like reprimanding, and this is getting into some parenting tactics, so to each their own about how your parenting styles are. But if you have a kid that's struggling, especially when it comes to women, like think about how you can encourage them and get them to think about budgeting and do it in a way that's like age appropriate. But like you have to get them to think about those skills and really start to develop those early on, because it's going to carry them through life.
I like that. I like that a lot. Empowerment. Okay. I received that. Guys, again, in the comments, if you have more questions for Sara, we got her for another 20 minutes or so. I want to take this on a different, I want to switch it up just a little bit for you, Sara.
Let's do it.
Because look, I think I'm trying to find the right way to say this to be politically correct. I'm aware that we got to do a better job fixing the stereotypes and all the things associated with it. But part of me feels that we have to look at it both ways, right? So, for instance, there are folks who are single, who are dating, right? And we have these, I'm trying to find, not stereotype isn't the right way, but this, gender role identity thing going on, right? As in, i.e., the brother or the guy has to have a certain economic status. He has to be able to pay for everything. He has to put his best financial foot forward. I asked this one time in the post, I was like, would you date a man who went 90 days without spending money on you? And girls went ballistic. Oh, nah, man. And so part of me is wondering, how does that dynamic shift? Like, should men start looking at women's economic status the way our economic status has been looked at? Like, how does all of this women empowerment, women getting the money, and women in finances, how does that impact or change or shift the way we date from your perspective?
Oh gosh. Dating now from when I met my husband is like so different. And I just like, if you are a single person, or if you are out in the dating world, like, my condolences. I hate to put it that way, but oh my goodness, it is so tough. And it is so easy for someone to be like, oh, there's plenty more fish in the sea. And it is just wild, the amount of ghosting, and like these apps are just like wild. So first and foremost, take a deep breath. Secondly, I get the whole concept of like guys paying for the date and whatnot. And I will have to say, the first date, I typically looked for the guy to pay, and it was more of like, do you respect me, than anything else. And that was like how I perceived it. But a lot of times after that, it was splitting the bill. And if I split the bill on the first date, like, there was no second date. There was like one time where I actually paid for my beer and walked out of a first date like mid-date, because I just like wasn't having it. The guy was like the worst. It's a story for another time. But so I would say like first date, I think, is a little different, and just I'm a little bit more traditional, and like, hey, like, I like the dating app I was on, like the woman reached out, and that was how like conversation started. And so I wanted to make sure that like, are you going to put in the effort? Like, are you, because I know there's a lot of guys who, like, at least in my dating pool, that were a little lazy. Yeah. So I think the first, maybe second date, but then after that, like, you got to realize, like, if you want him to wine and dine you and all this stuff, like, what's that really coming from? Like, where is that need coming from? And is it something to like show off, or like go to your girlfriends and be like, check out what this guy just did? Like, I think that there were points in my early dating life with some of my girlfriends where like one of them was like, yeah, he picked me up in a Porsche.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
it turns out the guy rented it to like totally fake her out. So that's a whole different thing. It's like a pseudo catfishing situation. But you shouldn't go in debt to be dating someone. Like if anything, you should really be, and I know it's early and it's hard, like having those, trying to feel out those conversations about like, where are you at in all of this? And I would say that even if I think about my earning potential since I started dating my husband has been completely different too. So to go back to your question, I think it's really tough. And I think people have different motivations behind why. And I think I'll just pick on Brene Brown for this, like clear is kind. Like you got to be clear about some of these things. And if who's paying for the date is really important for you and here's why, like that's something you got to be able to stand behind. And if you can stand behind it and feel really confident about it, then like, yeah, have that conversation. Like, and if you have that conversation and they leave, like, well, now you know. And you just didn't wait like 4 months of your life, wasted 4 months of your life going on like great dates, and then it was like, oh, that was a dud.
So just for the record, guys, I was one of those people that I always pay. Like and I don't even have to be dating you. If I'm with a girl or a lady, it's just how I was raised. Like it's just that providing instinct in me. So I just want to level set. I'm not asking this because I'm some cheapo who wouldn't pay. I would say this, man. I would say this, like Sasha, my wife, is the only girl who's ever paid for something for me. And it's probably one of the reasons why I fell in love with her, man, because I was like, oh, like she don't need my money. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I made a lot of dumb mistakes, Sarah, when it comes to like most of my debt. Like I was a serial dater. Most of my debt was because I was trying to acquire all this stuff so I can impress, right? You know, for whatever moment that was. And so I bring this up because if we're going to really have an honest conversation about shifting stereotypes where, you know, women should be in the forefront, women should get then we need to look at economics like holistically when we're dating. And economics does not necessarily mean how much money you make. It's what is your philosophy with money? Like, you know what I'm saying? I was reading an article on Divorce Magazine that says now financial troubles is the #1 cause of divorce. Like it's over infidelity, like it's over in-law, like, and so, but we don't talk a lot about it. And there's this assumption, in my opinion, that, you know, a woman gets into a marriage and it's like, oh, you know, the guy, that's baloney. And I actually posted this yesterday and I love the feedback I was getting from sisters. Sisters were like, yo, whoever has a gift, let them lead. But it's a partnership. Leading doesn't necessarily mean that I am the independent voice or I speak about it. Like, no, don't work that way. Have the conversations. There are a lot of instances where your wife makes more. And look, and this is for my fellas. Don't feel like, and you got to be secure in who you are. Like, don't feel that you're less than because your woman makes more than you. Yo, it's the same pool where everything's kind of going in, right? I'm perfectly fine if my wife makes more than me, and that's fine. And my wife she is an independent, wealthy person without me. Like if my wife divorced me today, she would be good all by herself. And so I welcome that. Like, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, I do think, Sarah, that as we start having these conversations, I do think we need to shift the standards or expectations from a dating perspective when it comes to economics. And it's less about, you know, can you pay my bills? Can you pay my nails? Can you do this, that, or third? No. How can we build together? Like straight up, how can we build? So yeah, anyway, that's my rant on that.
Joe, I've seen a lot of really interesting like memes and stuff about this. And it's like, well, we get paid 72 cents on the dollar. You want to split it that way? You can do percentages. If you really want to be equitable and fair. But I mean, all joking aside, like you got to figure out what's right for you. And there's going to be, and one of the things that I've also found really interesting is, especially when you are in a partnership where it's two people, you both have careers. there are going to be times where one career is going to be more important than the other. And you have to find the right balance of like who's focusing a little bit more on their career now versus who's really focusing on their career in 6 months and things of that nature. Because I think there is this natural ebb and flow in a way that you can support your partner on both sides of the fence to be able to get ahead. And so I think it's something to just think about. It's not always like the breadwinner who's going to have their career at the forefront, because you may be limiting the other partner from being able to get ahead. So just something to think about, regardless of who's the quote unquote breadwinner.
I love it. Now let me ask you this one, and this one is like, you mentioned this, and I think it's so important. And I have a case study, actually, a story to share. But talk to me about this whole like people not getting paid, like women not getting paid enough, and the art of negotiation as a woman. Because I feel like women have to strike this balance, right, of not being emotionally distraught, like, you know what I'm saying, or like you got to come across professional, but you don't have the same kind of wiggle room that men do, in my opinion. I would love to kind of hear your point of view on, for the woman who applied for a job, wants to get it, and wants to negotiate the salary. What counsel or advice do you give to them?
Yeah, so this one's super interesting, and there's a few things that I want to talk about. One of them is, it is not illegal to talk about how much money you make.
Yes.
And I repeat that. It is not illegal to talk about how much money you make with your colleagues, with someone who's looking to get into your organization. I can tell you that I've shared with a lot of people at previous employers and my current one, like, hey, this is how much I make, and here's what I negotiated as my intro package. So having that ally who can kind of help you on, like, where are the levers? Like, is it a sign-on bonus? Is it stock? Is it base pay versus like overall commission? Or is it a bonus of some sort? Or what I've really seen as of late is, give me 6 months and then we'll renegotiate my compensation package after I've proven to you that I am a successful person in this role and far beyond anyone else on the team. So I think that's also something to think about, is like, hey, I'm willing to give you a range. Always give a range. Do not give a number. And always make sure you're a little bit higher on that range and make them really uncomfortable. Because I think the most important thing is back it up by data. There are so many apps out there, so many websites where you can do some research on how much they're paying for different types of roles, pros and cons, things of that nature. Definitely negotiate that. But it's not just about the stock, the cash, the bonuses, things like that. It's about the benefits as well. Think about PTO. How much are they paying into your HSA? How much are they matching on your 401k? Some of those things are kind of set in stone, more organizational wide, but something to think about as an overall like holistic package. If you're looking at two different organizations and one matches your 401k like 50 cents on the dollar and the other one doesn't, like, I think there's a clear winner there. And then you take that other package that might be a little bit higher when it comes to cash value and say, well, the market is actually saying this, inclusive of whatever benefits you're going to give me. So I think there's an opportunity to really pin different organizations against one another. And especially if you're negotiating with a female, I think it's important to play the female card. Like, you wouldn't want to be underpaid, would you? Like, I'm trying to get market rate. And obviously it depends on the type of relationship you have with the recruiter or the hiring manager and all that fun stuff. But I would encourage you, before you even apply, if you know someone at that company, have them go look up the hiring manager, build that relationship before your application even hits the system. Because that's going to be a huge differentiator. You've done your homework, you're reaching out to the right people, building those relationships before you even get to the interview, because that makes you become not a stranger. Now you're becoming someone that's like an acquaintance in their network. And I think that can make all of the difference when it comes to getting some information and intel, especially if you know someone within that company.
Yeah, look, I love it. And for all the ladies who are watching, I want to just tell you right now, you should always be negotiating when opportunities are right for more income. Don't be afraid. There's nothing wrong. You deserve to get paid equal, if not more. I'll give you an example. I had a friend of mine who was looking for work. She was a nurse, and she had applied to two different, I think it was 3 different ones, but she got 2 offers. And, she said, her husband reached out and said, Joseph, can you help her with negotiating? I'm nervous she might just get comfortable and take whatever they throw at her. And I'd spoken to her, and, her response was like, yeah, they called me, they gave me an amount. I told them, where do I sign? And I was like, whoa. Like, before you sign anywhere, like, how much do you think you're worth? What is the actual, like, the actual amount that people in that field get paid for this role? And she said, like, I feel like I can get more, but right now I just need work. And I was like, you got to ask. Like, she's like, well, I don't want to mess anything up. I was like, no, you got to ask. And there's ways that you could do it where you're not coming across like, mean or greedy, but you could be thoughtful. Like, look, you got to take care of my family. Like, there's things that you got to do. And after a couple of reiterations, she was able to get $15,000 more, and it was no problem. And so, guys, look, the whole idea of being nervous or scared to ask, the worst they could tell you is, no, we can't do it. Sarah, you hit the nail on the head. Most companies have ranges. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so and from the range, it's within a given tier. So this tier, we can give from 100 to 120, and they'll come in at 104, 105. Ask them what the range is, and then tell them I'm looking elsewhere. And if you've already shown the value that you are someone, if they're talking to you about the money, that means they clearly see that you could be a good candidate for that position. So I want to empower women. Like, look, go get what's yours. Go win with money. All right. I really appreciate it. I don't know if there's any more. I see you, GP saying partnership and strategy together, the marriage asset. I love it, man. I love it, GP. Appreciate you, my brother. Appreciate you.
Last
Justin,
thing I will say on the partnership and marriage thing.
Yeah.
My husband and I went through every single financial account after we got engaged. We kind of knew about some of this stuff, and we had talked openly about trading stock and things of that nature. But once we got engaged and before we got married, we got our house in order. Like, yes. Figuratively, we figured out how much we had in every single one of these buckets to make sure that we were budgeting for a wedding and making sure we were paying cash and not putting it on credit cards and stuff like that. Yes. And then, like, where you're at, where you're going, where you're headed. And then you start to put together some of your financial goals. Like, as a couple, like, what are your financial goals? How do I make sure that I've got my fun money that he asks zero questions about? I can spend it how I want. And how can he do the same? Like, yes. Yeah, go to the golf simulator. That's where he's at right now. Like, go have fun. And, if I want to go get my nails done, or if I want to go buy like a wine certification book or something like that, because that's how I want to do my hobbies, like, I can do that. Zero questions.
Yeah, I love it. Me and Shad did the same thing. Sarah, it was like, matter of fact, we made that part of our premarital counseling. It was like, we're going to talk about, the things that impact us, our lives, our history. And no, we was going to talk about money, because then we spent, I think it was like 8 weeks on finances, like, as part of the thing, because it was that important to us. And I can tell you right now, I know a lot of people see money as like a kryptonite. But for us, money has been the engine for our marriage. And I'm telling y'all, man, like, and the reason why I say it's the engine, Sarah, is because when you talk about money and you talk about those, dreams and goals, we always focus on what we like when the last time you actually dreamt with your spouse? Like where do we want to go? Like, how do we want to change the world? All the budget is just a reflection of what we dream about. That's what it really comes down to. And so it's less tedious. It's not like where this dollar's going. It's more of, babe, we wanted to open this community center in Africa. Like, we wanted to, give scholarships to kids. Like, we want to make an impact. Okay, now money's gonna, kind of go where our mouth is. So I'm loving all of this, man. I'm loving all of this. Sarah, I appreciate you so much. I
appreciate you so much.
No worries, man. Look, we're in this together. Women, ladies, I want to just kind of, turn to you, just Sarah. Well, before even that, turn to you, Sarah, again, I want to say thank you. I don't know if you have any parting words before I kind of give some final remarks to the team. Anything you want to say?
Control your financial destiny, women. Like, you are fully empowered to do it. The sky is the limit. Like, whatever you put your mind to, you're going to be successful in. And I am here to empower you and tell you you can do it. So That's my parting words.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sara. Guys, I really hope you guys appreciate it today. Let's talk money. My girl Sara really kind of brought in, why it's so important for women to start winning with money, to get the pay that they deserve, to get the wealth that they deserve. I really want to see y'all winning, and so I hope you guys enjoyed her. Before we wrap this up, though, I have a major announcement to make. All right, and I think you guys are going to be some of the first people to hear this. But as we now go into the month of April and we wrap up Women's History Month, I know April for some of y'all is tax season. For some of y'all just focus on Easter. But we're about to take this thing to a whole nother level. We go into a whole nother level because we're going to be launching our Financial Freedom Series, right? You heard it, our Financial Freedom Series. I got some of the best guys in the business, and we're going to be really leaning in on this idea of becoming free, like experience freedom and economic liberation through 4 critical areas. 1 is real estate, 2, stock, debt elimination, and mindset shift. I got my boy Issa, who's going to share his story on how real estate's changed his world. Y'all seen Steven, he was at my last conference. The dude brought the house down. He's going to talk about his story, how he came from Singapore, and how the stock market and how he's leveraging it to build generational wealth. I'm going to really harp on this idea of debt elimination and shifting from consumer to owner. And then we got the closer. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Myron Edmonds, who's going to wrap up this series. This is going to be streamed on my Facebook page. So the month of April, we're not going to have Let's Talk Money. April 11th through the 14th at 6 p.m. every single day. We're bringing the heat. It's going to be on my Facebook page. I'm going to post this tomorrow, the flyer. I need you guys to share it. But guys, I promise you, listen to me. I promise you, this stuff is going to if you want to get inspired, if you're trying to win with money, if you're tired of losing and you want to experience freedom, I'm telling y'all, man, the same freedom when I look my wife in the eyes and I told her, you don't got to work no more. That's the same freedom I want to part to y'all. And so I'm going to give you guys all the intel, all the information. Stay locked in. I'm going to be going ham on my socials over the next 2 weeks to hype this event. But I need y'all to tap in. Otherwise, I appreciate y'all. I'm going to see y'all soon. All right, God bless.
Before Financial Legacy Academy, we were secure in where we were. We were paying all our bills on time. But one thing that we weren't doing is setting aside things that we could use for later.
I was a straight consumer, period. Just used money to spend.
I was a spendthrift. I was very materialistic, whether it was cars or jewelry or things of that nature.
This class gave us a clear strategy. Financial Legacy brought a certain amount of consistency to what we were doing. Now we were doing things intentionally.
With this class, we've totally invested our money in the right places. We've saved our money. We're more on a budget.
We're in a better financial place.
What we took from it was able to really sit down, come up with a plan together, and really allow ourselves to take our incomes together and grow them.
I think it's really important for the Black community to have a financial legacy because we've literally built America from the ground up. I would definitely recommend this class for anyone who wants to build wealth or wants to invest but doesn't know where to start.
We definitely recommend Financial Legacy.
Because not only is it going to change your current situation, but it's going to help you change the situation for all them cheering that you got coming in the future.